In 100 years, I believe we'll look back at our current education system in horror. It will look barbaric in comparison to whatever exists in the future. I imagine it'll be analogous to looking back at medieval practices from the past, sawing off limbs without anesthesia, doctors treating patients while smoking cigarettes, or the entire practice of medicine itself before hygiene and sanitation. Unless there are significant barriers put into place, I believe this progression is inevitable. The issue with our current system is a complete lack of innovation, a lack of experimentation, a complete inability to explore entirely new ways of teaching. If teaching and learning how to learn was an iceberg, I think it would be generous to say we've hit the tip of the iceberg. I don't know that the proverbial iceberg is even visible. In our current system, everything is standardized. Teachers and schools are judged using standardized tests which have no success in life predictive power. We continue to throw more money at the system rather than questioning the system itself. This brings the fear of the unknown. What happens if we fail? What if an alternative system doesn't work? Well, what happens if we continue what we're doing? Standardization may give us more equality, but what good is equality if we're all equal in a state of cognitive poverty? Progress cannot happen without the freedom and willingness to experiment, and with experimentation comes inevitable failure. Bureaucrats and administrative officials don't control high school football coaches. They shouldn't control teachers either. We need the freedom to challenge existing beliefs about what a classroom should be, if there's a classroom at all. We need the freedom to allow teachers to teach the way they believe their subject matter should be taught, rewarding those who are successful and allowing those who fail to try again or move on to something else. We need the freedom to try what may seem counterintuitive. At one point, someone decided they would start stretching like a dog. Today, we call that downward dog. Back then, it was probably crazy. But as many people today know, yoga has been great for their health, mental clarity, and lower back pain. There was a time when training to be a boxer meant boxing all the time, when sparring was a synonym for fighting. But some boxers like Vasily Lomachenko took a 4-year hiatus from boxing when his dad pushed him into ballet and dancing. After those 4 years, his dad was convinced he had the footwork necessary to be an elite-level boxer. His resume speaks for itself. 396 wins and 1 loss as an amateur, a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, a world champ by his 3rd fight, a 2-weight champ by his 7th fight, and a 3-weight champ by his 12th. Nose tackle Steve McClendon also took ballet after a coach in college told him it would help keep him in football. He's now in the NFL and attributes ballet to strengthening his knees, ankles, and feet. Conor McGregor was notorious within MMA not just for his feats inside the octagon, but for his utilization of movement coach Ido Portal spending some of his time training in unconventional ways. The use of sports psychologists has been a growing trend, with many athletes focusing more of their attention on their mind rather than purely focusing on their physical abilities. Whether or not these various methods become staples in the long run remains to be seen, but there's no doubt many other athletes in their field took notice, and some began to incorporate some of these new methods into their own training. These athletes were willing to fail. There was a chance that Lomachenko's 4-year stint as a dancer would have held him back. Stretching like a dog could have ended up as a complete waste of time. This experimentation can't happen with centralized control or standards that are enforced across the board. Standards follow conventional wisdom. They're rigid. They're there for a reason. At one point, Charles Darwin had to challenge standards, and we're all better off for it, as ridiculous as his ideas may have seemed at the time. But who decides these standards? 60 years ago, martial arts was much more centralized. The words of senseis and dojo masters were gospel to the point of con artistry. They would fool others, including students, into thinking they had the touch of death, and questioning authority was simply unacceptable. Over time, through competitions such as mixed martial arts, we've seen rapid transformation that's challenged much of the conventional wisdom of the past. The martial arts of yesterday fall apart the second a willing opponent isn't put in front of them with pre-choreographed moves. Promotions such as Pride and the UFC have shown what actually works through competing ideas, with different approaches to training and specializations across the various martial arts. The results are simply undeniable when you're getting knocked out or choked unconscious. Today's education system is the martial arts of 60 years ago. rigid and outdated with only a handful of people dictating what's allowed. We need a similar revolution in education. It may be a Montessori-style education. It may be a guild similar to the days of the Renaissance with master craftsmen and apprentices learning under their guidance. It will more than likely depend on the subject and the craft being taught. The good news is, this is already happening whether we realize it or not. There are far too many democratizing technologies out there for it not to be. The next generation of educators may be streaming on YouTube or Twitch right now. Aaron Blaise was an animator at Disney working under Glenn Keane, who most recently won an Academy Award with Kobe Bryant for Best Animated Short Film, Dear Basketball. Aaron went on to work on films such as Mulan, Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, and Aladdin before he took his skill set to the internet and live streaming platforms such as Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. In his day, Aaron Blaise worked under a master like Glenn Keane at Disney. Today, anyone can learn from Aaron Blaise through the internet. No face-to-face interaction or campus required. The next generation of educators can use democratizing technologies such as self-publishing services on Amazon to write and distribute their own books. No permission necessary from industry gatekeepers. Podcasters like Dan Carlin have revived people's interest in subjects like history by teaching or entertaining his subject matter through an entirely different medium through his well-known podcast, Hardcore History. With these new innovative ways of teaching, we'll also see new ways of funding education as well. Educators can earn an income through patrons on services like Patreon. Live streamers can receive donations through streaming services such as Twitch. Unlike traditional colleges, which require you to pay tens of thousands of dollars up front, schools of the future may change to a pay-when-you're-paid model. Lambda School is an alternative to college that doesn't require you to pay anything for your education until you're hired and making at least $50,000 a year. Or nonprofits such as Khan Academy will do it all for free, creating content that's accessible to everyone, relying entirely on charitable donations. When people ask, "What do you propose to replace the current system?" they're asking the wrong question. The system won't be replaced by another system. It will be replaced by multiple competing systems targeted to specific people and interests with their own unique ideas and approaches to educating minds, young and old. The possibilities are endless, and we're just getting started.